Do you know about the drug dealer with John Thompson? You ever heard about this?
The drug dealer, no.
Okay, let me tell you about this.
I know the Iverson story well, but not this.
One of the biggest drug traffickers ever. He recently died within the last 6 months. This guy, Rayful Edmond.
Oh, I know that name. Yeah.
Probably.
Can we pull him up, Alessi? Rayful Edmond?
Yeah, probably on the short list outside of New York City, one of the biggest drug traffickers, American-born of all time. This guy was making 20, 30, 40 million a month.
A month?
Yeah. Selling
Frank
crack.
Lucas. Way beyond that. Yeah.
This Rayful Edmond was.
Oh, not this one?
Yeah.
Oh, he just died.
Yeah, he died late. Well, it's funny because he actually became a rat in prison, and he was released late 23, I think, and he died like 6 months after.
Wow.
So at the time in the 80s, he essentially adopted and gave out crack and brought it to Washington. That's how the crack epidemic started there. Like he owned Southeast, Southwest D.C. and was making a ton of money. And he'd go into like an Italian clothing store and drop 400, 500,000. And he loved basketball. Rayful played basketball, big basketball guy, and he loved Georgetown. And in the 80s, they were the premier basketball team in the country.
Yeah.
Lonzo Mourning, guys like that. John Turner.
Dikembe.
Yep. And Rayful would sit courtside. And John Thompson had found out that Rayful was taking his kids to the club. John Turner, Lonzo Mourning.
No.
Yeah, and John didn't say much. He just said, "Go get him and bring him to me." And they said, "It's Rayful Edmond. He ain't gonna come see you." He goes, "Tell him I want to see him." And Rayful said, "Absolutely." And he walks in. "I'm going to see John Thompson. I'm going to sit down with John Thompson." They shut the door, and they said for like the next hour, John Thompson just railed into him. "Stay the away from my players. If I ever see you by my players again, da-da-da-da-da." And Rayful never came to another game after that. They said that's how much respect John Thompson had, that he basically told the biggest drug dealer in the country to get lost. Don't come back. Because he cared about his kids.
He did. John Thompson, and you brought it up, but if you go through the Allen Iverson story and what he did there, and of course people say right away, well, of course, if they're a generational talent, you'll make an exception.
That time, but Allen was Allen was a historically good Virginia football and basketball player.
He was a better football player than basketball player, which is
but he had gotten years in prison for a bowling, which that whole story's a mess as well.
Yeah.
But still, what I'm saying is like we don't have those type of coaches anymore. Most coaches now, all they care about is winning games, going to Final Fours, which is fine. You obviously have to do that to get paid and whatever. But caring about a kid who comes from a broken area or maybe doesn't have a father, those coaches cared more, I think, than the ones do now. And they're all gone. The Larinagas who have been around 50 years.
Yeah. The Nick Sabans, these guys are leaving.
Yeah. And listen, it's probable that those coaches that are coming now are better coaches. They're smarter coaches probably. Do they care as much about kids becoming men and being good people in society? I don't know.
What's up, guys? For the next 20 minutes of this conversation, Jeff and I got deep on the 2000s NBA era and some other things related to that. That was kind of totally off topic for the video. So I decided to make that a Patreon episode, and I'm going to pick up our conversation right now at the part where we start talking about the cartels. So here we go.
Even people that go to Mexico for vacation, I think are insane.
Depends where you go.
I would never step foot in Mexico.
Not
ever.
Anywhere.
No, never.
I haven't, so I can't speak to it. But
there are nearly 200 countries on the planet. Go to another one. There are about 30 countries that I would never go to. I don't care. Why
aren't you going? And obviously the answer is going to be cartels, but specifically, why aren't you going to somewhere in Mexico that's a resort area? Sure,
because drug cartels literally run those places. And again, maybe Tulum, there's certain areas of Tulum that are really nice, but you're still going to have military walking on the beach. You're still going to have all that sort of thing. And I guess I'll say to most people, you'll probably be fine. And there's probably 10, 20% chance something will happen. But you need an ATM. You go off the beaten path and you're going to get stuck up and they're going to steal all your money in your account.
Yeah, you ever seen the video of the gay couple that got pulled over on the side of the road?
Sure.
That was right outside a resort.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
people don't realize that outside of these city centers, for instance, 2 years ago, there were 4 individuals from South Carolina that went to Mexico for a surgery. They're from South Carolina. I don't know if you remember that story.
No.
4 of them, they drive from South Carolina to Texas. They go through the border at Matamoros. They go into Matamoros, and they're going to this plastic surgeon to get much cheaper plastic surgery. They're in a van. They're mistaken for Haitian gangsters.
Oh, no.
And the Gulf Cartel.
Oh, I do remember
which,
this. Yeah.
There's a group called the Scorpion Group that run Matamoros. They have barricades. And you see a group of 4 people that are not Mexican driving through it, barreling through. You're going to think they're like the ops. So they're apprehended and kidnapped. 2 of them were killed. 2 were released back to the country. But, I mean, that's
Didn't they send the bodies back as an apology or something?
They sent back the 5 people. No, they tied them up and gave them up to the United States.
Oh, my God.
But, like, that's the kind of shit we're dealing with. Like, a simple, I'm going to go to Tijuana and get some medication can be, like, really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, we've obviously had some people in here from Ed Calderon to Kat Schultz to John Norris, talking more from the U.S. side, to Jorge Ventura, Luis Navia, who worked with all these guys, and they all talk about it. Like, they run the whole country. Like, there's no denying that. You would think that, like, there's places where they're not dumb enough to do shit, but to your point, I've heard stories, I don't know if it's Cancun, I can't remember, but some of these resort places, you know, people will be, like, pulling into the town and there's, like, bodies hanging, you know, from the side. So I see what you're saying.
I mean, like, I have people that I know that, like, I live in San Diego, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I drive to Rosarito every couple of weeks. And it's like, you drive into Mexico? Like, that's one thing I would, like, no fuck. Like, maybe flying to Tulum. Okay, I get it. But driving into Mexico is insane. Like, that's an insane idea. Because at the end of the day, like, if I'm a criminal group and I see you, him, and me driving into Mexico, I would extort you too.
Yeah.
Like, who wouldn't do that?
I'd see your haircut and I'd be like, no, this is a real guy.
Maybe not
Stay
me,
away.
but like you and him are fucked.
Yeah.
Like, your whole wallet's gone. Because I'm jacking you up and I'll probably steal your car and, like, that's it. Like, that goes on in this country. You know?
Yeah.
Like, you go to the wrong neighborhood, they're gonna strip you down.
Yeah.
Like, so you, like, and in a world where there are absolutely no laws, it's anarchy. There is no laws. Those cartels run, and as Calderon will tell you, there are hundreds of cartel groups.
Yeah,
it's not just like the Sinaloa. That's when people are like, it's the cartel is going to get me. It's like, well, which one?
Yeah,
because there's hundreds.
Have you followed, like, the whole aftermath of this El Mayo thing?
Sure.
All right, what's going on there?
So I had some TikToks on this that went crazy viral. But one thing people, and I'm sure these guys have told you, and, like, I remember when, like, I'm a big proponent of, I think the biggest problem this country faces as a whole is not the economy, not anything. It's the drug war is a complete failure at every level.
Yep.
And it's completely affected policing.
Yep.
It's affected every segment of our community. And, well, now it's affecting white people, so we care about it all of a sudden. But for years, it wasn't. So nobody cared about it. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
It's affecting white suburbia, so we care now. But
it's sad that that's true, but that is
But
true.
it was funny when El Chapo was apprehended by the United States and they paraded him like they do. You know, they have all the cameras and stuff. They basically had basically said, like, it's the end. The drug war's over now. We've gotten our guy.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, he's not even the leader of it. Number two, they painted him as the boogeyman, and they've always painted Chapo and the Sons as the boogeymen.
But it's really El Mayo.
Yeah. He was a part of the El Mayo faction, which at one point they were close, him and Chapo.
Yeah.
El Mayo and Chapo came up under the Guadalajara cartel many years ago with Rafael Caro Quintero and all these other guys, which, if you've watched Narcos, you know that.
Of course, yeah. Narcos Mexico.
Yeah, and they band together, and they have the western side of Mexico, the coastal areas, the Jalisco, Sinaloa, that area. And a lot of big ports there, right? Manzanillo's there, a lot of big ports. So they turn drug trafficking inward. And a lot of Mexico has always been a trampoline. When you look at drug trafficking, it starts in Ecuador, Colombia, that area. It then transfers trampolines into the United States. Mexico's your trampoline. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they transform drug trafficking. We all know that, but eventually they get into arguments, fights. And what's crazy about the cartel world is they're all rats. They all telling each other, like all of them.
Are you referring to that in the capacity of to law enforcement or just in general?
Like if you look into like El Chapo's trial, one of the chief witnesses was Mayo's son, Vicente Zambada. He was his son.
Ooh.
I mean, they do this, and it's way different than like Cosa Nostra, the mafia, where like cooperating is a no-no. But then you look at like
there's a lot of them that do that.
Yeah, like you do it to get people out of the way.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like especially big people. But yeah, when El Mayo was apprehended, I mean, I for years thought he was a CIA asset personally.
Long before this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that. Because
what made you think that?
Because if you look into his background, his wife had a brother who was a CIA agent in Cuba back in like the 60s. And I forget his name, but I'd interviewed, I don't know if you've ever spoken to Luis Chaparro.
I haven't yet. We're trying to make that happen.
He's a guy you should get on because he had kind of done some deep research on this. I believe his last name is Garcia. And this Garcia, he was in with Castro in the United States and Cuba, and he ended up going out to the West Coast. He lived in California. He started selling marijuana. And he had made inroads. Eventually his sister had met Ishmael Mayo Zambada. They got married. And a lot of people, I think, for years thought that he was an asset. Remember, he was the only leader of a cartel in 50 years that had never been arrested.
Yep.
Anything.
But part of that also, like, the little devil's advocate, is that he was the stone cold opposite of El Chapo. He was quiet in the hills, grandfatherly.
But a lot of guys were like that. There's a lot of traffickers that are like that. And again,
got clipped.
They're so powerful. Does it even matter?
Yeah.
I mean, and people, I think, for a while wondered, how is he able to continue to operate and nobody does anything about it?
Yeah.
But I think in the end, he'll probably die before he sees much prison time anyway. I mean, he's very old.
He's old. What happened there, though? That whole takedown, I've asked a few people about that. That was crazy.
Well, you look at even like the Chapitos, the sons of El Chapo.
Yeah.
Like they're all very interesting. Because like you have like Ivan, who's like kind of, I would say, the most powerful son. He's obviously, I think, the heir apparent to his father. But then you have like the youngest, Ovidio. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like weak. Like he never really should have been in that life. And his father even knew that. That's why I called him the mouse. He was a very like timid guy. Mm. And I think in a way, like they broker with the United States on certain things, like get my brother out and we'll give you this guy, or get this guy. And I'm sure his father even tried to get released. Like his father's in the ADX, right? So the ADX is end of the road. There's no human contact with anybody. And he's been whining for years. He's been in the ADX for years.
That's the last place I'd ever want to be.
And he's in H unit, which is SAM's prisoner. SAM's is special administrative measure, which means a judge has to put you in SAM's. There's only a certain amount of people in SAM's.
They have like a shittier place within that place?
Inside it. There's Range 13, which is...
You're talking about Florence ADX SuperMax in Colorado.
Correct. That SAM's unit is terrorists.
That's like where they have Ramzi Youssef.
Youssef, the shoe bomber, the underwear bomb, like all those guys. And then they have people like El Chapo, Joe Carcharnayev, the Boston Marathon guy, Dylan Roof, people like that. Yeah. They're in Sam's unit, so they have no human contact with anybody. And Chapo has been writing letters to the judge, Brian Cogan, in his case, and whining about it. I can't see my family. My wife's not even allowed to come here. And I think you have to ask yourself at some point, do we have to look at this and say this is cruel and unusual punishment?
Even for people like that?
Correct. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we have a series of laws we have in this country where even people like that, and I know I'm not going to say there are people that should have the same laws as us, but you have to treat them in a certain way. But I think he probably even tried to move to maybe get out of that prison. Like, we'll barter. We'll give you this for this.
Right. So he may have been behind the whole.
Which I think's off limits. They'll never let him out of ADX. He's escaped like 3 times. It's never going to happen.
Those were all Mexican prisons, though.
Right. And he's never going to get out of 8X. But if he could broker maybe to like a USP, which is one level below.
Right.
But even like you look at the litigation for these people. I recently talked to an attorney that I didn't have him on my show. It was kind of off the record. But he was he was dealing with a client that was a high-level trafficker. And he told me the trial's a joke. There's no like, they just bring like rats up on the stand and just, they say this happened. It's like, oh, okay, it probably happened. And that's that. Like,
it's not incentivized.
Like, yeah. Because there's such a push on, we need to take these people off the street, especially this administration. Because they paint the boogeyman as the drug trade is the problem. And these are the people that did it. The Ovidio Guzman, the Ivan Guzman, the Chapitos. They didn't create fentanyl. Fentanyl comes from China. It doesn't come from Mexico.
But they do funnel it.
They traffic it.
Yes.
Right. But everybody traffics. They all traffic fentanyl.
Yeah, but they're getting in all defense here though. They're getting it.
But in the end,
border. They're the experts.
Anybody listening, and I'd ask you too, has the price, has the amount, has anything in the drug trafficking world changed whatsoever when El Chapo was arrested?
No. It's
Didn't
like
cost any more.
It's like cutting off, a leaf of a tree. Oh well.
Right.
It's
like taking a thing of sand out of the beach. It's a complete and utter waste of time. But, and there's one way to fix it, and they'll never do it because people will be up in arms about it. They're already up in arms
legalization?
About it. Yes, but it would have to be, and I've heard David Simon talk about this, the creator of The Wire.
Great show.
But I would urge you, if you're a fan of the show, to watch some of his talks that he does. He'll do interviews with PBS, things of that nature. And he's a big advocate for the drug trade, the drug war, not for the drug trade, but the ending of the drug war, because it has completely changed society. And he talks about how, think if we as a country, the people at the top, the president, Congress, all these different people, where they just stopped for a second and looked at what has happened to America, the America they left behind. Those people have never been to Philadelphia or, parts of New York City. Like, they don't know what really goes on. And think if we were to, like, you look at Kensington in Philadelphia, right?
It's insane.
It's this open air drug market.
Yes.
But if we actually put time into it, it could work. We just piecemeal and throw it into one area with no research and just be like, hey, everybody do drugs here and it's okay. Think if we had like places to go where people could do these drugs, right? Because they're going to do them anyway.
Yes.
Whether they're legal or not. It would eliminate the black market where you go to a regulated clinic where drugs are not filled with poison and arsenic and all this different shit. And we give you a platform that's tax-based where we use some of the waste of all the money we've gotten from this war. And we put it into programs for people. And we say, these 5 people, your friends, have all gotten clean. What if we entice you to get clean too? And then maybe we could take some of the vacant properties we have, because we have millions of them around America. We can get some contractors to flip them with government money, and we could put these people into homes. And maybe we can enforce and put them back into the workforce. Because again, we do have an unemployment problem, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, why don't we try to take this
unreported unemployment, by the way.
Right. Yeah. But and Simon talked about this. Like, we should look at it like the New Deal, which we did after the Great Depression, where we reinforced people to say, you are not doing anything for our economy currently. I mean, you look at 10, 15% of this country, they're completely useless to the economy. They don't pay taxes. They live in another world. And we're talking about homeless, drug addicts, people like that, criminals. They're going to be there, and they're already a problem. So why don't we try to find a way to take a large percentage of them, get them clean, get them help with mental health, and try to reinvigorate the community again. I don't understand why we just let this happen. But what I do, because there's a lot of money behind it.
Yes.
Criminal police departments make, 85% of the arrests are probably drug related.
Yeah, and you've heard, like, Joe Rogan's made the point for years that you'll look at these cities and they have, like, something called a homeless coordinator that's making $300,000 a year. They're incentivized not to get rid of their job.
Right.
It's like the administration nightmare.
And that's why nothing will change here, because there's so much money in hunting people, basically.
Yeah.
because we don't know where to put them.
Yeah.
So we just put them in prison.
And it's easy. It's easy to just kind of discard a person and whatever.
And people will always say, it's
sick. That's what they do.
And people will say to me, why would we legalize drugs? What would that do? Look at Kenston. Right, but let's say we actually started with Kenston and we tried it there and we took all the people that are drug addicts and shooting up on the street and we put them into like a facility and we just tried and started somewhere. And think if everyone got behind it. But most people don't care because they don't deal with it.
It's not in their backyard.
Yes. Someone in middle America doesn't care, right?
Yeah. So, well, you make a good point, though, too. People started caring about this more when it started happening to suburbia.
White people.
And also what you're talking about, too, that should be said on top of this is that we had, the biggest cartel right here legalized in America with the Sacklers and the disgusting shit that they did to this country, getting people who never would have been addicted to drugs, addicted to all kinds of drugs because you gave them shit they didn't need at way too high of a dose and lied to them about what you were giving them.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just crazy.
I think that's the sad part about most drug addicts because if you ask them, none of them chose to become drug addicts.
Yeah.
It was really just you started doing Oxy because you got in a car accident. Before you know it, you're down on Kensington and Somerset and you're buying a $10 bag.
Yep.
And now it's not even drugs anymore. Fentanyl now is just poison. Any drug now is poison, really. So there's so much cut in drugs that
it's insane.
They're not drugs. But that's the big thing about regulating an industry. I remember when gambling was regulated. Gambling went from being in pool halls and back rooms. Now it's a regulated business. We have an oversight committee that runs it to make sure that people are getting paid, casinos are doing things the right way. Think if we had a regulated industry for narcotics where heroin, for instance, without the cut in it and all that, and it's done the right way, people aren't dying on their feet.
It's a really, really tough conversation for a lot of reasons. It's one I struggle with. What I will say is a guy like David Simon, you don't have to agree with all the things he said, but it is absolutely someone you should hear out because, and I don't just say this because I was a fan of the show, but The Wire is one of the most brilliant things ever made.
And look at the show. Actually look at...
It's a documentary with actors.
Yeah. And a lot of the things 20 years ago that they put out there... Same
thing today.
...have come true.
Yes.
Yep. And I think it really should be required viewing for every person in America.
I agree 100%.
Because, it's a city that...
takes place in Baltimore.
Yeah. And you mentioned money, the homeless coordinator. Mm-hmm. Anytime you have an incentive or statistic-based business where if you do well... you'll get paid more.
Right.
So you look at how drugs have destroyed policing, right? We see policing where we see all these protests and people are, the stop and frisk and all this different stuff, people running in homes, cops and stuff. Think if we eliminated the drug arrest stuff, the low-level arrests, and we focused police departments on real crime, violent crime. I heard a stat that in the federal prison population, there are 160,000 federal prisoners in America, and 10% are violent offenders.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
So it's where are the violent offenders?
Right.
It's they're on the street. And that's why crime is insane. And now we have it where we don't really prosecute anyone, or we didn't for a while. Maybe it's changing a little bit, but no civilized society can operate like that.
We've operated in such insane pendulums when it comes to, law and crime. It's not healthy. And they've shifted so fast back and forth, even over the last 15 years, I'd say. It's probably been 4 shifts.
We talked about it earlier. It's one extreme or the other.
Yes.
There's no hey, let's just focus on getting bad people off the street. It's no, let's arrest everybody or let's arrest nobody or
right.
It's never just. And Simon also talked about policing, and he did and looked in the show the people that get promoted are the ones that have the most arrests.
That's right.
So and those people that are promoted, let's say 20 years or 30 years ago, they're now sergeants and teaching younger police how to police.
Yes,
which is the wrong way. And then 40 years down the road, we look at all our police and we say, integration did nothing. So it doesn't matter if they're black police officers or white police officers. They're just doing it wrong.
Yep.
And we wonder why all this bad stuff happens. most cops are so scared to even police now too.
Yes.
Because
Works
of
both ways.
consent decrees and stuff.
Yep.
So like, I don't know how or why people would choose to be a cop nowadays. I've never understood like, what's the.
Yeah, you're making a great point because they're kind of burning from both ends of the stick and both ends of the candle in the wrong way. On the one hand, they're afraid to do their job because everything's on video and can be changed, and the context can be changed. And on the other hand, when they do their job, they're incentivized to hit a quota, which means they're going to make mistakes, and there's someone who pays for that in some way, whether it be through a fine or a criminal record, or both. On the other end, and so there's a human cost, and it takes away moral judgment. I always talk about this. Everything is just a downstream effect from some asshole who's got to say that they did this statistic so they can win on a Tuesday in November. And I see it. We've done a lot of podcasts in here talking about the difficulty with the court system and what that incentivizes. Like I had Brian McMonagle in here for episode 115, one of the greatest defense attorneys of all time.
Sure.
And he came from the prosecution side, as many do, to the defense side. And, nicest guy ever. I've known him all my life. Literally one of the most moral people I've ever known. And I always wondered, like, how does he, of all people, deal with the idea, not that he would ever say this, but I'll say this from the outside, deal with the idea that he represents some really guilty people, like a lot of them.
Well,
and he's got to sit up at night about that. So it's like, I was asking him how you do that. And the big part, and he was honest about it and struggled with it, but he's like, you got to put the government to the test. You have to make them do their job. That's why I do it.
One of the things that I've on my social media have championed for is, in a way, every person is innocent until proven guilty. Nowadays, they're not, because the public eye, like for instance, Diddy, prime example. In most people's eyes, Diddy is guilty, right?
Would agree.
Now, if you actually read the indictment, if I told you it was one of the weakest indictments you've ever seen, would you believe me?
Can you explain?
I don't know what's illegal about it, to be honest.
What makes you say that?
Because most of the shit you hear about Diddy is all this stuff that has never happened. For instance, like there's kids in the indictment. He was messing around with kids and stuff. There is none. Okay?
Why do you say there's none?
Because when you read the indictment, I think it's 16 pages. This current one. Now, if they supersede it and add another one, a more serious one, we don't know that.
Okay.
But the current indictment now basically states that he hosted these parties, whether it be at his house or another place, and he had people that got him women and people to come to it. They willingly went to it. Okay? Just like anybody goes to a party.
And they say that in the indictment.
Right. There's nothing illegal about that. Now, if you look into some like the federal laws against, for instance, let's say I meet a woman in Ohio on Instagram and I fly her to my house and we have sex. Technically, I'm breaking a federal law.
If it's consensual, though?
Yes. If I pay her, essentially. Like, let's say I take her to dinner and I buy her a handbag. Technically, that is illegal.
Whoa.
If you read into like federal law, which Diddy was essentially doing. Now, they then go to these parties. They get drunk, which most people do at parties.
Yep.
They take narcotics. Most people do that at parties.
Yeah.
And there are cameras there and they're filmed. Now, I'm not saying that maybe certain people did stuff they didn't want to do. How would that be? How could you prove that, though? What I'm saying is a lot of the indictment is like, I try to find like things that were illegal in it. Look, did he beat Cassie up? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We saw that.
You're not arguing that he's not a scumbag. You're arguing whether or not,
and I'm also
accusations, whether he broke the law.
Yeah, I'm no attorney, but I'm just looking at it and saying the court of public opinion has made it out that he has R-worded hundreds of people. And what will happen ultimately is the feds will get him, his people, all the people that worked for him, they'll flip on him. And he'll be the guy in the end that goes down for it. Because he was essentially, in a way, like the boss of a family, right? Where they'll basically just say, well, he told me to do it, so I did it. I got that girl to come here. Now, that girl willingly got on a flight and came there. She was probably paid for it too, and she went willingly.
But there's also like the accusations, like it's kind of the Weinstein method, where there would be a you, especially like with males too, like you got to do this. Like I'm gonna fuck you, or you're not getting a record deal.
But again, then bring all Hollywood up for an indictment. Then
they all think they all do that.
Yeah, I mean that's a tale as old as time, man. I'm not saying it's right.
Type idea.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, if let's say you're at a Diddy party, you're like some up and coming singer, you're attractive, beautiful girl. I mean, you're bordering on like he comes to you and says, "Hey, you want to hook up? You know, I got you next time you need something." How much is that going? That goes on a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
like we're bordering on like,
and like this. People aren't gonna like hearing this, but when you look at it legally, you can't say that that's not a very odd, uncomfortable gray area.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not necessarily black and white, unfortunately.
And that's my point. Like, I think you're close on a lot of things to like legal behavior. Like it's not as like cut and dry as you think. Now in the media, we've been made to hate him, which is fine. I get it. But all I'm saying is, and we see this a lot in society where, you know, we hear something, the person's already guilty. We don't give them their day in court.
Yes.
You know, and then when they get off, it's like, oh, what a great guy. I cannot believe people did that. It's like, wait, hold on. A year ago, you were saying.
That's right.
You know, like.
It's a problem.
Yeah. I don't know if you follow that case in Idaho.
Koberger?
Yeah.
I've seen you tweeting about this.
Like,
you think it's a weak case?
Insanely.
Why? He's the one who allegedly killed the 4 college students.
Now again, this is why predicting this stuff can be hard, because all we know is what we know, right? There's a gag order on a lot of this stuff. And even in the Diddy case, if they supersede the indictment tomorrow, I could look really stupid. I'm just only going off what we know now. But what we know now about Brian Koberger, okay? Have you seen a murder weapon? No. Doesn't exist.
No.
Have you seen him there?
Seen him at the scene of the
crime? Have
you
seen any photos, video? No. Have you heard him there?
No.
Okay. Do you know that his car was there?
They did. They tracked his phone, right?
Hold on. A car was there. A car was there that is similar to his car. Which, by the way, when they first put the year out, they got it wrong. The year of the car. Okay. Number 2, phone pings do not put you at a location. They put you in an area, but they don't put you at a location. For instance, in Moscow, Idaho, there might only be 2 cell towers, 3 cell towers. It could ping 5 miles away. Just because he's in Moscow doesn't mean he committed this crime. There's very little DNA other than a small amount on a knife sheath. Okay.
Were they able to match it to him?
No. Oh yeah, they matched it to him. That's how they found him, through illegal means, through DNA websites. They went to the feds, and the feds basically helped them get the profile, and they pinpointed it to his father. Now remember, but
it was on a knife sheet.
It was on a sheath.
Yeah. Where it
was wedged in like the mattress, basically on the side.
Wouldn't that be pretty? Even if they got it surreptitiously, which is a separate argument, isn't that pretty?
But what if I also told you, which this has also been put out, there were multiple other male DNAs found in the house, not his, including blood that wasn't his. And number 2,
did he have partners doing it with him?
Possibly, or just was other people. Number 2, what if I told you the house was a party house? A lot of people went there. Could be anybody. There's also no audio, video. There's no surveillance. Nothing puts him at the house. Nothing other than circumstantial evidence. But he kind of looks like a crazy guy, doesn't he?
It might be an Amanda Knox kind of thing.
But what constitutes that?
Right.
Carlo Gambino looked like a regular grandfather.
But he's a bad guy.
But he was probably the most influential mafia boss of all time.
Yep.
You know? So you can't go off that. But we also add the fact that there's Reddit. There's people like Nancy Grace. There's people that, don't put any they just don't like the person. So they don't give him the opportunity to defend himself. We live in America where you have the opportunity. And remember, the judge agreed with people like me because he moved the case out of Moscow to Boise because he realized they're not going to get a fair trial there.
Right.
Throw in the fact, how do we know that crime scene wasn't contaminated? The roommates waited 8 hours to call the police after it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There were roommates, surviving roommates, 2 of them.
And they waited 8 hours?
Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen were the surviving roommates.
Were they...
They were up and texting each other during all this shit.
Do you think... Was it shock?
I mean, they were texting each other. Like,
I know,
hey, I
but
think
like
someone's in the house.
Right.
You don't hear that? 4 people were basically decapitated. You didn't hear that?
Yeah, gruesome.
And also throw this in. How could a person who is in his 20s, is in college, who's never killed anyone as far as we know, he manages to systematically take out 4 people in 8 minutes and doesn't leave any blood, hair. There's none in his car, none in his house, nothing. It's
very sketchy.
Also, I think sometimes you have to, when you look at these cases as like a true crime person, why would he do this? What would be the motive? He's a guy going for his doctorate. He didn't know these.
Well, sometimes people are just a crazy person,
right? And that's true.
I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer exists.
But he has no known psychiatric problems, as far as we know. He didn't know them at all. He didn't know any of them. But what social media does is, oh yeah, he followed some of them online. No, he didn't. The family said he did not know any of them. So like, you have to weigh what's true and what's not, right? And like, I just think we have to start looking at people and saying, we live in America, and if that was your brother or father or uncle or whoever, or your boyfriend, wouldn't you want them to get a fair trial?
Sure.
And if they're guilty, they should go to prison.
And that's the difficult thing. It's like when someone seems really guilty, you want to be like, oh, throw the book at him or whatever. But and just like you were talking about with Florence ADX, like someone's a horrible person, put him in the worst bottom of the hole. You know, I don't say this to be a total bleeding heart or whatever, but there's a happy medium there. And I don't mean to say happy, but there's a medium with this stuff to where you have to be, if you're America, this great, beautiful experiment that, you know, we built this document, the Constitution, that gives people these inalienable rights. There has to be the shining beacon on the hill type symbolism, and we need to exhibit that here. And the places where you most exhibit it are at the times when you want to exhibit it the least.
If Brian Koberger took them out, he should go to prison.
100%.
And he should probably face the DP at the end of the day. But he is a person that is a citizen in America and deserves a fair trial, regardless of what he did or who he did it to. And it is the state or federal government's duty to prove that. Again, it's not my problem to prove. It's your problem.
Yes.
You brought it. So a state prosecutor, it's your job. And my job as a defense attorney is to poke holes in what you did. And I'm sure McMonagle, I would just say, I would guess, for me, if you ask me that question and I'm an attorney, I would say because everybody in this country deserves a fair trial.
That's what he says.
Some of them, you know, it's not my job to judge. I don't care. I'm here to be paid on getting them off and giving them a fair opportunity.
Yes.
And
part of it is, what if the government can throw the book at them in a way that's wrong, what are they going to do to the next guy?
And there's thousands of people per year that do 30, 40 years in prison. And guess what? We find out somebody lied or some, you know, cop was an asshole. Whatever.
Yeah, we had a case on this show that we handled, and my friend Tyree, he's out of prison now. He sat in prison for almost 30 years.
30 years.
It's crazy.
Think about that. How old are you? You're like
32.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's basically your whole life.
Yes.
Like, that's insane to think about.
And he's still not fully exonerated.
And guess what they do? They basically just, sometimes they'll give you some money or something. You might win like a suit or something. But a lot of the time it's just, have a good life.
It's crazy, man.
And it's like, well, hold on a second.
And then you read the case file and you see the kind of shit that was pulled. And you're like, what? Like, in America, this happened?
That's why, like, I'll never... And it's hard because there's sometimes you'll hear things and it's like, you don't, like, they're not, like, I'm not trying to say that I don't think anyone should go to prison or anything. Like, if you do a crime and you're a bad person, you should go to prison. But
absolutely, we
also have to give people their due court. You know, even like that Mangione kid, you know,
you have to give them due process for sure.
Like, you know, and like in that case, I think it's going to be really hard to find 12 people that'll find him guilty.
You really?
Yes.
Why?
Because you have to have all 12 of them in unison agree. Do you know how many people hate insurance companies?
Oh, well, actually, yeah.
How many people have been screwed, even on like a low level?
Meaning not on the facts, but find them not guilty because it's a symbol.
And you look at that case too. I mean, it's so pathetic. I mean, like the federal government, why did they pick that case up? They don't handle murder cases.
Well, I mean, he went across state lines.
It's
a federal case.
Let the state of New York handle it.
But they're all going to handle it. It's such a big case, man.
Of course.
It's a public
We're going to get
company,
promotions out of it. That's why we're going to handle it.
Well, it's not actually, I'm going to see this less cynically. It's not even just that. It is such a public case. It's one where, you know, someone of a public company that is like the biggest insurance giant in the country was gunned down in the biggest city in the world.
It was not in aid of, like, for instance, they'll handle murders in aid of racketeering.
Sure.
For instance. But like handling a singular murder case is a waste. They should be doing other things. Let the state of New York handle it. What I'm trying to say is, though, it's a resource-based case where, like, they're putting a lot of resources into this one thing where, I mean, let the state of New York handle it, and you go out with more pressing business and handle the things going on in New York City, right? In the Southern District, handle the cartel groups, handle the, you know, I just think it's a weird waste of resources. But look at how they parade him out. And they make him out to be like he's, you know, El Chapo. Or
that's probably excessive. It's just like a lot of, this is what I struggle with in America on so many issues, man. A lot of things can be true at the same time. The kid something obviously happened to him, right? Like something mentally happened to him. It's my best guess and your best guess what that is. You know, I'm not a doctor, but something went off with him. He, in the midst of that happening, recognized something that is a huge problem. The health insurance industry is a disgrace. We've allowed it to be a disgrace. I'm talking about that from the governmental level. It's something that should be totally fucking reformed. But you also can't just go pick out a fucking technically law-abiding citizen and blow him away on 57th Street in the middle of everyone in society. Like, you gotta, like, and I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that the system's not going to continue to grind to a halt like it always does and change doesn't happen. And you're like, well, this is the anarchy that could spark it happening. I get that argument, but we gotta find another way as a society, even if it's way harder.
And yeah, his way of doing it, like, again, it didn't change anything. I mean,
no.
My premium's still the same amount, and like I still have the same
Mine
rules.
went up.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, there was no real. It's not like anyone was like, "Oh my God, let's rise up and fix this." Like, this is a problem. Some insular CEO was killed. I mean, in the end, but you even look at him. Like, I find people that do these things, like, he didn't think at all about it. Even like, why do you still have all the belongings with you?
Very strange.
Like, if he didn't have them with him, he probably would have a decent shot.
Yeah,
you can't make him out in
the whole thing's off. And we're not gonna go crazy here, but like you look at it the first time and you're almost like what did he like get MK Ultra'd or something?
If you'd have told me that was the kid that did it, like when I first saw it, like I've looked enough into like crime and like hitmen and stuff. Like that was
I was getting the Nadu breakdown the instant he was caught. Like, here's why he's not a pro. Like step by step, play by play.
Like that was like I saw that and I'm thinking like even the way he handled the gun, it like no, but if you watch the video, he handled the malfunction. He was just like boom, boom, boom. Like it didn't even faze him.
Yeah.
Look,
he didn't put it in the head. That was the point you made right there. He's like professional.
A hitman will shoot you in the head. Yeah. 2 in the head. That's it.
Like, it was a very technical breakdown.
Yeah, they're not going to shoot you in like the back or something. Like you're hitting him in the head twice, boom. And he also like him going into Central Park was like very smart. Like he did smart things, but then it's like you still have the shit on you like in some McDonald's in Altoona. You still have a lot of the stuff. It's just like, I don't know. But then you throw in the fact that he's attractive. People like, I mean, it's some of these trials are huge, and that's going to be a big one. But
yeah, that one's gonna be a weird one.
But you look at when the feds come, like these kids today don't think enough about that when they do these things. Like I'm not even talking about kids like him. I'm talking about like young kids in the streets that are out banging on people and selling drugs and they're really just going to hit you on RICO.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not even doing that now. Now they're hitting you with something called a 922C, which if you're a felon, you cannot possess a weapon. And the feds are basically going out, and that's how they're taking people off the street now. They're going to find, and they're going to go to an Instagram, right? And I see it in Philly all the time. I've looked into this a ton, where you'll find these young kids, these rappers, these kids in the streets doing stuff. Yep, they have pictures where they have weapons clearly in their waistband or whatever, and they're looking them up and they're saying, Joe Blow is a felon. He did 2 years. Why does he have a gun on him? Let's bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to hit you with 4 years straight out of the gate. They're just going to take you off the street.
Yeah.
And why they do that and why you're off the street, they'll keep your name there and they'll just keep watching you. And they'll say, okay, so-and-so's back in the streets. How does he have all this Amiri and all these chains and stuff? Where's he making this money from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look through him a little bit more. Let's put a little surveillance on him and his people. They're at 21st and Cambria. Let's put some surveillance on him. And it's real simple. How
They're wearing it on social media. It's crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys, like, there's a case out of Philadelphia, this guy, Arab. I don't know if you know Arab. He was a big rapper. Drake shouted him out.
Arab?
AR-AB. Assault rifle ab. He was a huge rapper.
I'm not familiar with this case.
Just Arab. He was on Vlad TV many times. This is a guy who was a street guy, and everything in his songs he was actually doing. To the point of, in his case, they brought the lyrics up. He went on Vlad and talked about, I did this, I did that. And they just basically they watched him.
It's like that scene in Better Call Saul. I think the very first scene where like he makes this argument and then the opposing attorney comes up and just goes, and then wheels in a TV, just plays the video of everything happening and walks away.
That's exactly what it is. And even in his case, they brought the lyrics up and his attorney tried to argue, this is just creative expression. It's not literal.
Yeah.
Then again, though, it was. They actually tied it to all the shit he was doing, and he got 45 years.
45
Yeah. They basically, he was selling a lot of narcotics. They surveilled his entire operation. I mean, you have a guy on the street, he's got $500,000 on his kitchen table. Where's your job? What do you do for a living?
From? Yeah.
And that's how they get people. And a lot of the time when the feds come to you and they kick your door in, case is already built.
Yeah.
So you fighting
we
it
talk
is
about that a lot.
Total waste of time.
Yeah.
They're going to come to you and say, you have two options here. Take our plea. So instead of giving you football numbers, we'll give you 10 years.
Right.
Or cooperate. And you're dead anyway. So do what you got to do.
Yeah,
you're not going to beat this.
Yeah.
No one's going to beat you. You're not going to beat us. We have everything. We've already built our case here. And that's the choice they give you. And they already have it built, so you're done. You know?
Yeah, my issue with some of those, and like a lot of them, they are making it that way, and it's pretty clear. And yeah, like they're getting their guy. There's other ones, though, again, you can talk about it slipping through the cracks, where they're incentivized to make a case. They rely on rats who they
that's
pressure.
all they rely on, really.
Yeah, but they really pressure people who are totally full of shit, and they know it, too. And then they make a case that's bullshit.
I saw recently that the FBI on the street right now has, I think, like...
Oh, you tweeted this
20,000 federal informants.
Yeah, like,
and they're
don't
spending
talk to
like
anybody.
and they're spending like $500 million a year on that. And these are informants that are informing on everything from terrorism to narcotics. Like, if the FBI didn't have informants, they wouldn't make any case.
Right.
I mean, other than the Mafia, the one thing the government did was stamp out the mob. They've done it better than anybody.
Yeah.
The American Mafia, from where it once was to where it is now, is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I knew through my grandpa, I knew the guy Jules Bonavolanta, who was on that famous team from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He's the guy who like invented Donnie Brasco, and then his career ended with taking down Gotti. So he worked with Karlstrom and Giuliani and fucking Louis Free and all these guys. And like part of it was they kind of, and this is my takeaway, they knew how to think like those guys. Like a guy like Jules came from the streets of Newark, right? He watched the mob like intimidate his dad, who owned a fucking laundry shop.
That's what Giuliani did too.
Yeah.
Really. You know one thing about Giuliani, a lot of people don't know this. His father was involved with the mob. A lot of people don't know that. He'll never tell you that.
I bet he won't.
His father was connected to the mob. Like he was a leg breaker for the mob.
A leg breaker?
Yeah. He was an enforcer. Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He'll never tell you that, but
I wasn't going to ask him, but
yeah. He always keeps that stuff out. But he, you look at where he was at one point, where he is now. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me. He was the most popular guy in the fucking country after 9/11. Like, he was at the high of the high. He was America's mayor. He could have rode off like that, and he's just kind of gone down this stream in his career. And I don't say that because, like, oh, he was up next to Trump. That's not why I'm saying it. It's like the guy he's become in doing that, and we've heard the stories on this podcast. John Kiriakou talked about how he tried to sell him a pardon. I mean, he operates like a mobster.
Yeah, he just became kind of also like a zany, weird, like weird guy. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you look at where the mob was at one point. I mean, they were literally, and I know we won't go into this deep, but like they literally were involved in getting rid of a president.
Yes.
Like I think if you don't believe that the mob had involvement in that,
yes, they had involvement.
You're crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, Carlos Marcello is, in my opinion, the most influential, successful mob boss of all time out of New Orleans.
Why do you say him over Trafficante?
They're both very powerful.
Okay.
They're both in unison, very close people together. They're very good friends. Marcello, you look at the swath of territory that he had, whether it was, he had people in Texas, I mean, all sorts of areas. But he hated Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy. And remember, the mob helped Kennedy get elected, right?
Yes.
They won Illinois because of
Dallas and Chicago.
Yes. And Kennedy's father was a bootlegger, very involved with the mob years ago. And they feel the mob that they owed him something. Kennedy comes out of nowhere. He starts hassling in, bothering people. And a lot of people don't know that Marcello was the person that he came down on most. He dropped him in Guatemala. I don't know if you've heard about that. Like,
yeah. Lou Ferrante talked about that.
Yeah, and Marcello hated him.
Yep.
And they basically said, look, let's not kill him. Let's just get rid of John. And there's just too many. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald and his connections to Marcello. And like, if you even look into the Martin Luther King assassination,
that one's a mess.
James Earl Ray was really connected to the mob in New Orleans.
Oh, you're putting that back to the mob.
I'm not saying they were involved, and if you look into Marcello, he hated blacks. He was a fervent racist, which is weird because he's
an Italian mob boss, not liking.
Well, but what's weird though, he is from Sicily and he was actually born in Tunisia.
Oh, it's the funniest thing because like we always joke about like the stereotypical racist like Italian guy, especially from the mob, and it's like, my guy. It's in your bloodlines.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. And
it's like Clayton Bigsby.
Right. But if you look at like even like FBI files, there was a lot of connection between James Earl Ray and the mob. But either nor there. They were this at one point. They were going after, I mean, they had every industry in America under their control. New York City at one point was
They built that. I always point to that. They built this fucking thing right here.
Everything from the concrete being poured to everything.
Yep.
And now, I mean, if I told you some of the things that I've come across as doing what I do, like they're worried about me. That's where they are now. There's certain guys that are worried about me, and it's like
dude's getting too loud.
Yeah, it's like, or one of them has a podcast, which is like if you'd have told me that years ago, or
talking about Merlino.
Yeah, allegedly he was the boss for years.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, but it's crazy. That's kind of where we are. So,
yeah. What do you? Because did you go on his show?
Yeah. And
I don't want to say something you said off camera. You don't want to talk about that part, right?
Whatever. I don't care.
So, but all right. Was this the show that happens now with him and Lil Snuff? Which I gotta give them this. Those guys hustle, man. They're working all the time. That concept was you originally floated that a few years ago.
Yeah, I had an idea to do it. We had tried to make it happen. And this has been talked about. There's another guy that's in my world that him and I were kind of involved with it. We had the idea. It was a tough time around those times as far as getting it and making it happen. Now I want to make this clear. I've known Snuff a long time.
Yeah,
he is a perfect host for Joey.
Oh, dude, he's so good.
And they know each other. They've known each other for years. It's just a perfect kind of in unison thing. And it's gotten to the point where it's right where they want it to be.
Yeah,
And
for people out there, by the way, I think we kind of said this, but just to be clear, we're talking about Joey Merlino, who is allegedly the longtime reputed mob boss of the Philadelphia
now, I will tell you,
family.
I don't, in all the work that I do, I will tell you straight out, I don't believe he's still involved with the Mafia. I don't.
Today.
I don't.
I would, what's crazy? And because it seems like he would be, I might believe you on that, actually.
And I've also said, and I'll go one further. I think saying that he is a Mafia member is also a little far.
Well, he was a made guy.
Do we know that, though? And here's hold on a second.
Dante and Luigi's, dude.
He was never charged in that. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't, but
But what I'm trying to say is,
allegedly.
Hear me out for a second. And I've been called a Joey simp. Everyone thinks I stand up for him and stuff. What I'm trying to say is, he was the son of a guy. His father was Chucky Merlino, was the underboss Philly mob under Nicky Scarfo. Very close. Him and Nicky stabbed the guy when they were 20. They were very close. Yeah. And all these
brought them together for the rest of their life.
They came up together, and then their sons, nephews, all got involved too. And Joey was involved with his friends. They were out, gambling, things like that. Were they gangsters or criminals? Yeah, but I think Joey kind of constitutes himself as just a street guy. I don't know if, I have a way that I can. There's a website I track that has ceremony dates, like mob induction ceremonies. And I don't even know when he would have been made. The boss at the time, John Stanf, and him were.
I know, but we don't we don't have all the inductions. I know there's been a lot of rats, but
no, I know
how many of these fucking
yeah.
ceremonies happen? I'm taking and burning my fucking head. It happens in a basement in Atlantic City in Ducktown. You know what I mean?
If there was a way that we could prove it, I would, as a betting man, I would say it's a coin flip that he's been made.
Made?
Yes.
Let alone you're
it's just
skipping the.
I think it's just
charge.
I think it's just assumed. I think it's assumed that because of who he was this larger than life guy. But ask yourself, what do we actually know
ever
about?
Would have let that happen?
But what do we? He didn't care. He still doesn't care. He does what he wants.
He does do what I've heard that.
In his friend group, he's the guy.
I've heard he just walks into a restaurant anywhere and just rips a bogue right in the middle of the place, and no one says shit.
And I remember as a kid, I heard him. He called into sports radio too. He called into Howard Eskin one time.
Did he call in as him?
Yes, and they were hassling him about Eric Lindros, the papers. He was hanging out with the hockey player, Eric Lindros. And people thought he was giving him tips and stuff.
I remember that.
But what do we really know about Joey? Has he been involved with bookmaking? Yeah, he admitted that. He went to jail for receiving stolen property.
Right.
But all the other stuff is just possibly, allegedly.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.